Hi everyone, this is Kristen with the Aurora Public Library. For our library minicon, I'm doing a crash course in digital painting featuring a fan art of everybody's favorite friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Alright, Digital Painting 101. As you can probably guess from the name, digital painting is painting on a computer instead of a canvas. The main tools you use are a program like Photoshop or Corel Painter and an input device that lets you draw on your screen. I use a Wacom Intuos 3 tablet that I've had for about 15 years. It is pretty tough. This tablet lets me draw on my screen using a special pen that is pressure sensitive. This means I can make big lines by pressing down really hard, or tiny faint lines by barely pressing at all. My number one favorite thing about digital painting is that if you make any mistake, you can just undo it. I used to have so much anxiety outlining my drawings in ink. I messed up all the time, and one mistake could ruin your picture. One time I even smushed a mosquito on my paper by accident and had a permanent bug smudge on my drawing that I worked really hard on. So, blah! Digital art is very forgiving, and that's one of the reasons why I love it. Number 2, colors. Not only is it great to be able to choose colors instantly without having to mix paints, but you can also use this tool called the eyedropper to mimic any color that you click on. Plus, I like to play with opacity to make subtle changes using slapdash color choices. Number 3, layers. Digital painting programs have something called layers, which are basically like transparent overhead projector slides, if you are old enough to remember what an overhead projector is. But it's like transparent sheets of paper, one after another, so you can make changes on one layer and not affect the other layers. And you can also do a test layer where you're like, hey, I wonder if his eye would look better if I colored it this color, and try painting on top of it, and then hide it and show it, and hide it and show it, and hide it and show it to try to determine if you like one or the other better, and you still have both options available to you the whole time. Number 4, the Liquify tool. You have probably never heard of this if you aren't familiar with digital painting because it's sort of a lesser known trick. But the Liquify tool is a function in Photoshop that lets you basically smudge chunks of the painting around, like it was made out of a really loose, smeary chalk. It's a way if you know that your painting is a little bit off, like his eye is just a little bit too far to the left or his nose is just a little bit too high up, you can smudge something into place without having to repaint the whole thing. Just a heads up, my recording software does not like the Liquify pop-up window. It sees it as invisible and doesn't show it in the final recording. So during the demo, you might occasionally see my mouse moving around doing nothing, and then suddenly the picture changes. That was me using Liquify and then hitting apply. Sorry about that, I did not notice that it didn't work until after I'd recorded everything. Number 5, flip horizontal. So, when you stare at the same thing too long, you can't tell what's wrong with it. That's why it's always good advice to take a break and come back with fresh eyes, as they say. A way to hack your brain while drawing, though, is to mirror an image. A mirrored image always seems fresh, even though you're still looking at the same picture, which means that your eyes can spot things to fix that you didn't catch before. That being said, let's start the demo. Step 1, you start with a rough sketch blocking in the shapes. You're just blocking in the guidelines for how much space he takes up and where all of his major features should be. My sketch is super slanted, though I couldn't see it at the time, even mirroring it back and forth, so that just shows that it takes a while for your eyes to be able to catch some of the issues sometimes. Step 2, you start blocking in the base colors. I use the eyedropper tool to pick out the brightest and boldest chunks of color in the reference image, so I knew which extremes I needed to be working between. Next step, I make the base sketch more transparent and start filling in details, keeping in mind that I can move, resize, and liquefy parts if something is slightly out of place. So I shouldn't be afraid of messing up too much at this phase. The point is to make bold moves and to get the structure down. And to remember that he's definitely going to look goofy at first, and that's okay. Quick general info. I painted this in about 7 hours back in early lockdown when I was first testing the idea of filming a painting on my computer. I've sped up the playback for you by about 8,000%. You'll see me zooming in and out and mirroring the image back and forth constantly. And I apologize if this is disorienting. All of the drawing demos I've filmed since then, I've tried to be very careful to keep the image still for the viewer's sake. But for detailed stuff like this, I really needed to zoom in close to see what I was doing. So, the whole thing is very choppy. I'm not a pro, but I thought it was important to show you all how dumb a portrait can look at the start before you really get it to where it looks right. If you're an aspiring artist and your initial picture doesn't look perfect, please don't give up. What people ascribe to talent is really just hard work and persistence in trying to fix your mistakes. plus experience training your eyes to see what's wrong so you know what it is you need to fix in the first place. Looking at the picture now, oh my gosh, his eyes don't match, his chin looks wonky. He doesn't look like Peter Parker at all. But at the moment when I was painting this, I was still having trouble seeing what was wrong and what areas I needed to work on and what direction they needed to go in order to start looking right. Sometimes it can be really frustrating when you know something's wrong but you don't know how to fix it. But I kept at it and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out in the end. It's interesting to me how the human brain is so sensitive about the differences in facial structure. It's so we can recognize one another so well and distinguish people apart, but it means that portraits are especially tricky to do because a tiny difference in facial proportions makes your brain say, no, that is not the same person as the reference image. It's not the same person you're trying to paint. By this point, he's starting to look more recognizable. There's still tweaks that have to be done here and there. I honestly really like the detail work. This is one of the most fun parts of the painting for me. I like that. I like how sometimes you can convey a lot of detail just by putting a couple little dots in a certain area or a couple little rough lines in one spot. I don't have a lot to say after this point, just more detail work. It starts to get easier and more fun around this point for me because I'm starting to be able to recognize him in the painting, and that's just really cool for me. It inspires me to keep going forward. It's also safer for me to start adding fine details at this point because when I had to liquify the chunks into place before, the Liquify tool blurs the parts that you move, meaning fine details can be blurred out and then the work you put into drawing them is lost. But now his facial structure is looking much more final now, so it's safe for me to go in and add the more delicate lines. And can I just say I love the lighting in the original reference photo? It was one of the first Google image results for him, but I love when figures are lit by a warm and cold light on either side. It looks so cool. I did a Daredevil piece like this once before too, though I had to make up some of the lighting on that, but it was really fun. Alright, and then finally, once his face is done, I did the costume. I don't find clothes super interesting, so I did this part really quickly. This was a breeze. You draw the lines, you put a slight light blue on the lines to make it look like the light is glinting off of something. I resized a little bit, then I reframed it as a portrait. I started messing with the background. I didn't really know what I was doing. At first I tried the test run of putting spider patterns back there, and instead I did paint blops. I outlined him stylistically, added some more paint blops, and there we go. This was my final image. I hope that this was kind of entertaining for you to watch. I know the Comic-Con conventions typically have like artists presenting and drawing tutorials and stuff, so I thought I'd try to contribute this for our library mini-con. Again, I'm not a professional, I just do this for fun. But I hope you had fun watching. And please check out all of the other mini-con stuff that my coworkers have worked so hard to present for you guys. And thanks for watching. Bye.